What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, reviewing today Borderlands 3. At last it's here, the most controversial project in all of 2019. This one game has caused multiple lawsuits, a boycott campaign, and even YouTube channels being completely shut down. So I guess the question just is, was it worth all this trouble? Do we really have to go through all this mess, and is it actually any fun? Honestly, yes. This is a very solid title, with some great shooting, some really interesting reworks of old mechanics, and a bit of some very terrible jokes. Let's just try and dig through this piece by piece and analyze why this sequel is great and where it has some very, very bad problems. Now, the story is actually very different this time around because the earlier games all took place on Pandora, a single planet that was fun and certainly funny, but it definitely had the downside of it was just a giant desert. If you spent hundreds of hours in this place, eventually you're going to get tired of staring at the wasteland. And it seems like the developers themselves have realized that this was a bit of a drawback because Borderlands 3 is intergalactic. You get a spaceship pretty early on and are able to travel from place to place, zipping to different worlds and seeing different landscapes. And this actually does a tremendous amount to make the game a lot more fast-paced. You are constantly just going from destination to destination, fighting new monsters, seeing new locales, and that really actually does a big thing to try and just make the game a lot more stunning. It makes it where every time you're just going through the game, you really have no idea what could come next. You are just perpetually getting surprised by new monsters and new things to shoot at, and of course, tons of new loot. Now, I do want to talk about one of the major downsides of this game, and probably the biggest issue I have overall, which is that this time around, the game just isn't that silly. I mean, it tries to be, it certainly thinks it's being funny, but it doesn't really manage to pull it off. I'm not sure if it's just that memes have managed to change what funny means, but it's just that this game constantly tries to stop the action to tell you a joke. You have to have people actually sit there and make holograms that are pooping and stuff. And while I enjoy some really raunchy, crazy humor, it's kind of annoying because the jokes just aren't great. I mean, you can only have Claptrap make so many ninja jokes before eventually you're like, okay, that's great, but where's the next cool thing I can fight? I'm tired of all these little cringy humor pieces because they just don't land. I mean, they're just not good. Having somebody actually stop and sit me down and make jokes about how bad they want a cup of coffee is not funny. I'm trying to actually go out there and play. I think that the reason the earlier Borderlands games worked so well is because they had antagonists that were actually likable. When you saw Handsome Jack and he was talking about the butt stallion, it was hysterical because you actually kind of like that. You like that this guy is so evil and just so crazy. Whereas the main villains here are these people called the Calypso Twins, who are basically, and this is just being serious here, they're basically evil space YouTubers. They actually kill people on camera, and they've gotten a giant legion of all the psychos to follow them because they just like to say, hey, be sure to like, subscribe, and obey. And now they've created this giant religion to spread throughout the stars. It just doesn't create that same sense of motivation that the previous games did. But what does keep you playing is just the raw combat. Shooting and looting has never been so freaking perfect. The gunplay in Borderlands has always been very, very stellar. This is a series that pretty much created the genre, in my opinion, of just trying to kill and kill and kill to try and find that next weapon and get that next upgrade, and just being excited about the combat for the sake of combat. And here, it has been refined down to the finest diamond. This is a point. And what I really like about it is that they've definitely tried to make a bunch of stuff in this so that the enemies are stronger and you are stronger with it. You can now do things like power sliding at full sprint and calling in backup. Last stand is still in here, so you can actually, when you're dead, you can fall down on the ground and try and shoot an opponent, and if you kill somebody before you die, you get a second wind and get to pop back up. It makes it where offense truly is the best defense. Yes, you could try and hide behind cover with a sniper rifle and pick people off one by one, but where Borderlands really shines the brightest is when you're out there in the chaos, dying and reviving for the sake of the fun of it. Now, here's something else about this is that I think that they've done some good stuff of trying to make it where the combat itself is just deeper. Just the fights themselves. Like, one of the things they've done is they've created a bunch of new types of weaponry. When you're picking up guns, each one, of course, is going to have different stats, like corrosion to melt people or a giant flame add-on. That way, when you're shooting people, it can actually ignite them if you get a headshot. But they've also added in a bunch of additional features where certain weapons can now have secondary functionality. Like, you may have a pistol that can shoot faster or slower, so you can just basically choose, do I want to dump ammunition for accuracy? Or some guns actually have very specific uses, like I found this cool shotgun at one point that could go back and forth between electric and fire, and so because of it, depending on the scenario, it was good to be able to switch it to the elemental type that'll be the most effective against those enemies. It definitely creates more choice. It definitely gives you more options, and well, honestly, it makes looting a lot more fun. Every single time I find a gun, I constantly just want to wipe an area out, and then while all the characters are over there talking and trying to tell their bad jokes, I would just start studying the guns on the ground, figuring out which would be the best for me, which ones would fit my loadout. Now, part of this actually just gets assisted by the fact that now we have a spaceship, and this spaceship is basically our own personal city. It lets us go up there and do upgrades and vendoring and all sorts of stuff like that, and of course, a bunch of stuff to actually customize the vessel itself. It makes it where, as you're exploring, everything around you is getting tweaked. Each piece of the world is getting improved just as much as you're being improved. Now, just real quick, I do want to talk about the different classes. Each of the different Borderlands games usually has a couple different heroes that have their own specialities, and this time around, there's a Beastmaster, which is the guy who has a pet, the Siren, who has really awesome magic, the Gunner, who has mechs, and my personal favorite, the Operative. This guy actually can summon basically a holographic clones of myself that can shoot and draw and fire. But what's interesting is this is only the way I chose to play it. Each of these characters actually has different talent trees that can very much alter their general playstyle. You can make it where you have different specials and different perks. I mean, it definitely makes it where the way you want to play can be done. And it definitely makes it where as you level up, you're constantly wanting to make a new character. I mean, I actually consider that to benefit, which is that the whole time I was playing this, I was actually looking at envy at the specials that other people were using. And I think that that's actually a huge benefit. A good game constantly wants you to play it. The best games manage to make you play it and want to get stronger. And I constantly want to play all the way to max level with every single character. This is really exemplified when it just comes to the multiplayer itself, because come on, the best part of any game is playing with friends. And this, well, it does it really well. Okay, so my favorite thing about this is honestly the fact that online matchmaking is very, very natural. Basically, whenever you're playing through a mission by yourself, people will just randomly phase in. If another person actually gets to the same part of the story as you, and you've turned on network options, they'll just appear in your world. And sometimes they can actually snowball up, where you get one random person, and then another random person, and then 3 random people, and then all of you are together trying to shoot and loot. But this doesn't make the game easier. In fact, it makes the game harder. The more people that join your game, the more enemies that show up, and the tougher they are to kill. But the upside is you get more benefits. They drop more guns. They actually shoot out better loot to sort of incentivize you to team up with partners, even if you might be afraid of the challenge. That is awesome. But with all this being said, the game isn't perfect. There's this underlying murkiness. There's something about Borderlands 3 that just never fully connects, which is that this does still feel like a game from the last generation. It just tries so hard to be goofy. It tries so hard that at times it just becomes a bit of an achy mess. It wants to try and force you into these cutscenes of big dramatic fights. It tries to have so many different characters that are supposed to be these epic heroes, but they show up for 10 minutes. Why bring back everybody from the entire universe and have them say like 5 lines and leave? I feel like you need to either bring these people back and give them an important part of the story or leave them out. Stop just having this cavalcade of cameos. Stop having people wave at the camera and walk out. I feel like the story of this is not not good. The world itself manages to be beautiful to look at, and some of the side quests are certainly interesting, but I don't care about it. Pandora is dead. Everything here is just the remnants of it. It's just one of those things where, at this point, I care for the gameplay. I care for the action. I'm probably going to do like 5 playthroughs of this total just because I actually want to try every character in every way. I want to level up. I want to get more guns. But I do not want to watch any more of these really cringy cutscenes. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but let's go to the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Borderlands 3 an 8.5 out of 10. So I've seen some of you asking me why this video is late. Typically I have my videos up before launch, but this time around I couldn't do it because 2K Games actually only gave out incomplete copies of Borderlands 3 to reviewers. You basically had to sign into the Epic Games Store and play this weird mode of it that was still in development. So I decided to wait in order to play the final game. So this is the real game you're seeing here, actually running on a PlayStation 4 Pro and not a weird incomplete build running on my PC. I hope that helps, and I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. Please give this a like if you enjoyed this review, and do me a big favor and subscribe. And obey. Okay, I'm not going to make the bad joke. Well, I'll leave the bad jokes to Borderlands. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.